A very good afternoon to one and all present here. Thank you so much for coming to a wonderful discussion which we're going to have on the topic building sciences for all audiences. Are you guys thrilled?
Yes.
Are you guys thrilled? The people on Zoom?
Yes, we are.
Yeah. So I would like to call upon Professor Mona Minkara, will be one of the panelists and will be leading the panel discussion. Professor Mona.
Thank you. Okay. How's everybody doing today? Okay, excellent. We have a few people in the audience. So I'm going to start off by just introducing the people on the panel. And then the first thing we're going to do is everybody's going to talk a little bit about what they do and where they're located right now in the world. So we have Dr. Sheri Wells-Jensen. Sheri, take it away. What is it that you do and where are you located right now?
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Sheri Wells-Jensen. I am an associate professor with training in linguistics at Bowling Green State University in very moist, very chilly Bowling Green, Ohio. Right now, a lot of my work has been in linguistics and doing things like syntax and phonetics, and I now do an amazing, wonderful thing called astrobiology, and I'm studying spaceflight and disability and interplanetary communication. So I have all the fun.
That is a lot of fun. Dr. Wanda Diaz-Merced, what is it that you do and where are you located?
Thank you, Mona. I'm from Puerto Rico. I'm located in Pisa, Italy. I work on magnetospherics. I'm an astrophysicist and computing scientist. I work on magnetospherics, gravitational waves, cosmic rays, the interaction of those with other rays that are around our planet. I also work on developing multisensorial ways to analyze astrophysics data. And I am a very good cleaner, and I'm a very good doing everything. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Wanda. And then finally, Dr. Hoby Wedler or Henry Wedler. I don't know. Yeah, go ahead, Hoby.
Or can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, just speak as loudly as you can and go ahead. Or maybe not. Okay, so Hoby, I don't think we can hear you if you're talking right now. Okay, I'll do a little bit of introduction. Hoby is a chemist and he is currently located in California, I believe. I mean, he lives in California. And I have basically known all three of the scientists here today, I don't know, for some of them for many years. I think I've known Hoby for at least 10 years. So we all identify as being blind, and I think what's really important is to start talking about how do we make science accessible? What does it mean to be a scientist in a world in which a lot of us are taught that science is only observable with the eyes? Sheri, do you want to start? You want to put in 2 cents, like your opinion on what do you think? How can we make science accessible, a little bit more accessible?
Okay, so I think there's 2 things that I was thinking about when I first got this panel invitation. One is that we are taught in graduate school and in college and high school and all our lives that the best way to get information is to look at things. As a matter of fact, I remember a lot of times when we were specifically told don't touch, even though touch is our natural way of exploring the world as blind people. So it is, I think lots of people just consider this a bad fit then. If you want to do something abstract or something extremely detailed, looking at it is understood as the best way. And sometimes it's understood as the only way. And our first thing that we have to do is get over that idea in our minds. It's intimidating, it can be scary, and it can be frustrating as a scientist coming up when you have to deal with everyone thinking that looking is the best way. And then a little piece of you might feel that way sometimes too, that, oh, if I could only look at this. So some of it is inside your own head. And then some of it is inside the heads of people who say they want to help you, but lack the kind of imagination they need to really be helpful. Sometimes what happens is they'll take a method that they have, for example, a way of, in my case, if I want to look at a spectrogram of a sound file, which is generally done on a flat computer screen. So they might look at that and think, well, you absolutely can't see that flat computer screen, and so you can't read this spectrogram. So how are you going to do articulatory? How are you going to do acoustics? So there are two things that I think about when I come across barriers like that. One is there's absolutely no reason for you as a scientist to accept without objection, to accept without consideration, even the way that other scientists are using. So maybe I don't need to make a spectrogram wholly accessible. Maybe, and I found this to be true, there are other ways in which I can access the same data. So I can't assume that the way the sighted person does a thing is going to be useful to me, even if I did have access to what they're doing, even if I could make a graphic printout of the spectrogram, that might not work. And so I have to think about not just how do I access the computer tools that everyone else uses, but what information do I really want to have and how do I get it? So I might, so I might, for example, if I want to know if the detail that I want from the spectrogram is just the fundamental frequency, the chart or the plot of the fundamental frequency, maybe I don't need the whole spectrogram. So I spend a lot of energy making the whole spectrogram accessible when that's not even actually what I want or what I need. I just need one piece of that data. So focusing on what data you really want to have rather than focusing on how other people get the data.
I think that's a really brilliant point, Sheri, that you make. So I can speak for myself, for everybody out there. I am a professor here of bioengineering. My degree is in computational chemistry. And I feel like it was a journey for me to get to a point to come to that realization that you're speaking of, Sheri. So like one thing I talk about is I study proteins and protein dynamics and how proteins move. And one of the main way that sighted people obtain that information is by seeing it in a video type kind of file, right? They see the protein moving as a structure. Well, maybe there's another way for me to obtain these patterns differently. Maybe plotting it or looking at the mathematical frequency changes within the protein moving is the way I need to interact. So that in and of itself is almost another kind of adventure to try to go on. Wanda, do you have any thoughts about this?
Indeed, I do support what you're both saying. I can tell my humble experience on trying to get to my data analysis with which I had to interact dynamically, right? Apply mathematical states dynamically to the data, being conscious that space science data is composed of many oscillation modes that are overimposed on each other. And I was trying to find a way to be able to, shall I use the word compete? We need to compete. Now, we need to compete in a humanistic way. We need to compete in a way that I'm allowed to perform my science just as I am using my diverse ways of functioning, just as others are able right now to do it, which is a very, very, very narrow band of the perceptual diversity that exists in the world. The thing, just to tell you a little bit of my story is that I began using sound, and my mentor at the University of Harvard came to me and he said, well, you're using audio, but haven't you ever wondered why astrophysics are not using audio? And I thought, well, these people, they think that they are very smart. They think they are, I know it all in the universe. So we did experiments because we couldn't find any evidence, right, of why scientifically they stopped using audio. They were using it at the age of the 1800s They were using audio to capture events in the data, even named phenomena with audio terms, etc. Linguistically, Sheri knows must know more about this, like whistler mode emissions, ringing, chirping, coming from the experience of the researcher hearing the data. And I did experiments. I couldn't find any evidence why they're not using other sensorial. They're so smart. It has to be. They did experiments, and audio is not useful to analyze the data. I need to either touch it or, I don't know, borrow a pair of eyes in order to explore the data. And when I did the experiments at the university where I was, our results evidence that when professional astronomers use audio, their sensitivity to events in the data increases. Events in the data that by nature are blind to the human eye.
So
And
sorry, go
yes.
ahead.
No,
I was
tell
gonna
me.
say, in conclusion, your research showed that having this other like input of information actually helped be more sensitive to these events that you're talking about, like from an
To events that by nature people will be blind to, in the periphery of the visual field, or in the boundary of the center and the periphery of the visual field, where attention modalities are more compromised, especially if the spectra are really noisy. Now, or visually noisy. The thing is that at that moment I got really depressed, because I thought, why did you leave me out? Why I can't compete at the same rate that you're all competing? You left me out for no reason. And my mentors, they said, this is not reason to get depressed. This is a reason to move this forward. So in that way, to finish right this intervention is that my humble advice, right, for scientists to make science accessible is to always wonder, is the way I'm conveying this science, either in papers or in presentations or in the university classroom, is the way I'm using to convey this information, is it making anyone feel, ¿cómo se dice? I do not remember the word. Is it making anyone, there is a word I'm searching and I cannot find it in my mind. Is inadequate? Is it making anyone feel inadequate? Because I mean, given my experience, and we have been doing a lot of work, right, in trying to transform the way science is being done, at least in my field. I can talk from the perspective of a professional astronomer. The way I felt going to presentations in which no one brought audio, and that was okay. And if I would bring audio to the presentation, people will be complaining, asking for visuals. I felt really inadequate. So that is my advice for the scientists. I apologize. I talk a lot. Forgive me.
No, don't worry. Hoby, are you still with us, or do you think we lost Hoby? People, I don't know. Okay, I think we lost Hoby. Sheri, do you have okay, so we have an audience. I can't tell how many people are in the room right now. Like 10? Yeah. And hopefully way more on Zoom. So we have an audience of people in front of us in the room right now and people on Zoom. And I feel like a lot of people are not necessarily used to seeing a blind scientist. Are you willing to share a little bit about your story and your journey and any kind of like revelations that you might have had? Sheri, you want to go?
Revelations. The other thing I was thinking about when I was preparing for this is what things I wished I'd known, or what things were most important to me, or what things I could do now as a scientist, or what things I wish scientists would do. And I like Wanda's point about making sure that you don't exclude people and make people feel rotten, because that's just a basic human decency thing, to try to be inclusive.
I mean,
but I think the thing that made a huge difference to me were those few times when somebody said, oh, I notice you and you seem like you're interested in this topic. Let me come be with me. Let me mentor you. Let me at least walk with you for a little of this path. I had a dissertation advisor who was very much interested in all the women in our cohort, actually, who were doing phonetics, and she was marvelous. And my first phonetics teacher also was a person who, although he was very shy, I think, was also willing to work one-on-one. And so there are two sides of that coin. You can't wait as a junior scientist or as a student for someone to notice you. You can't sit with your hand up and wait to be called on. And it's a very difficult thing to do. But at some point, in order to get your business happening and to get started on doing science, you have to be bolder than you feel like you want to be. And you have to be more assertive than you feel comfortable with. It's definitely way outside of my comfort zone. The first time I went to my phonetics professor's office and said, you know, about these spectrograms, how are we going to do this? I think he would have been fine if I'd kept my head down and just tried to get along. And, you know, I could have managed the class somehow or other, making something up on my own. But it's initiative that I had to show, and that honestly, it's our responsibility as established scientists to show to the students, because it's hard to be the one going to office hours and asking for help, because we don't want to be a bother.
Oh, I bothered everybody.
See, well, I was not that.
It took a while though. I had to get to that point, you know. I had to be like, professor, like, so
Yep.
I want to learn this. How you gonna teach it to me?
And it's difficult. You're breaking barriers and you're busting out of your own comfort zone, and you're breaking rules, spoken and unspoken, that have been placed on you as a disabled person. You're really not supposed to fuss too much. You're really not supposed to try to cause more trouble. I think we are used to feeling like we're a little bit of a bother just because we exist.
Or burden, right?
Yeah.
Or like you don't want to cause trouble, because then they'll tell you, well, you don't belong here.
Right.
And that's like something I could tell you I've heard and I didn't want to hear, right? Like, I don't want to hear that I don't belong in this class, because I really want to learn this material. So there's a balance of pushing and being like, no, I want to learn, but then a point in which then maybe your teacher tells you, well, maybe this is not meant for you.
And my experience both with being asked, both with asking for the support and mentorship I really wanted and offering it, my advice to people would be to talk about the subject matter. You can talk a little bit about yourself and how excited you are, but it's easier for an established scientist to dismiss a person than it is for that scientist to dismiss their own topic. So if a student comes to me and says, oh, I just love linguistics, I have to say, oh, you want to talk to me about something that's also important to me. So I try always to make it about the discipline and not about the person. I would never, for example, say, I want to do well in your class. You get nowhere as a student saying that to any faculty member. But people are like, okay, we'll help you. We'll do what we have to do. But if a student comes to me and says, this topic fascinates me, then a lot of my barriers go down and my willingness to spend time with that person goes up. So that's a thing that's an approach strategy.
Okay, that's really good advice, actually, for anybody who might be faculty or even as a student. If you are trying to, you know, learn and you're a little bit unconventional, whatever that means, but you know that go to the faculty and focus on the discipline that you need help with. Is that right? Am I summarizing that right? That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
I always say that we don't lack people who want to do science. We don't lack people who want to do science. What we lack is the environment to allow them to be the scientists they want to be. And so, Wanda, how do you think we can make that environment? What is your opinion?
I do think that there are a couple of things that, thank you, Mona, and thank you, Sheri. I share your point of view, very, very important, very enriching. There are a number of things, right? That the main thing I would get involved with is on changing the institutional mentality, which is highly reflected on the performance mentality in the institution, on the interactions of every human in the institutions. Their interactions, their expectations, and how much they trust that people like me can do the science. If you would have asked me 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, this question, I would have told you, sometimes I doubt myself. But asking me today, I do not doubt my science because I practice with these people. I know how they think. I know what they know, and I know what they do not know. And I also know how to interact with them, right? In order to create an environment of value, not discarding the ones that do not know as much as I am, and for them not to discard me because I'm not an expert in their subject of interest. I'm not an expert in all the subjects. With that, what I'm saying is that we need to change the configuration of the discourse of the scientific institution. Socially, professionally, in higher education, in the classroom, because as perhaps you already know, the aspects that shapes inequality are linked to the discourse of institutions and the discourse of the people. And discourse is about choices the institutions make about the digital programs they use, the metrics of productivities they have, the attitudes we have, the employment structures they have, the people hired to develop the platforms, the people hired to participate in hiring committees, and again the attitudes we have, and the access around all of that evolve with which is an access that has to do with an economical model and a metric of productivity that has focused on profit, on what is perceivable as possible. If it is not perceived as possible, because the mathematics is not done, the analysis is not done as we think it has to be done, you are not in. You're left out, and that is currently happening today. I'm lucky because I'm in the gravitational observatory in Pisa, which has been after Harvard the only institution that has given it, and it's not charity, has given me the opportunity to mainstream in the field, to mainstream. It's not that, which is another thing that we have to stop, is to divert efforts for inclusion, efforts that are targeting inclusion, mainstreaming inclusion. They are completely diverted to education and people outreach, completely diverted. So what I'm saying is that we have efforts. We need to change the discourse, the monosensorial discourse that we are using if we want science to continue moving forward and generating more fantastic discoveries. How many black holes we would have discovered decades ago if we would have been using audio?
That's a really good question, Wanda. Wanda, so we have an audience right now. If there's one really easy piece of advice of what people can do moving forward, students, staff, and faculty alike, what would you tell everybody?
An easy one. An easy one. I think I have a couple. What do you think, Sheri?
Oh, I have, this is my go-to advice. I tell every student that comes through my doors, regardless of their ability, which is understand that a lot of the time you're not going to feel it. And you're going to be overwhelmed, and it's going to be hard. And I don't think I know anybody, no matter how much they have achieved, who doesn't spend the occasional afternoon feeling like I'm a fake, I'm a failure, I'm a fraud, I don't belong here. What the heck am I doing? I'm no good at this. Help me. I've made bad choices. We all feel that. We all feel that every once in a while. And what your job as a human being is, to get used to that feeling and make friends with it, because it's not going to go away. And understand that you still keep moving, even when you feel miserable, and that you're not alone. And so you need your people, right? So when I feel that way, and it happens to me a lot, and I'm a pretty confident person. I know I've got good skills. I'm successful. I've got a job, all the good stuff, doing my research, everything's going great, but it still hits me every once in a while. Oh, what am I doing? And I recognize that voice when it speaks to me. I recognize that it's not my friend, but it is in some ways my friend, because it's familiar to me. So then I just go to my people. I'll go to Mona and I'll say, Mona, I'm having this terrible day, and she'll say, oh, and we'll talk it through, and things will get better. So
You rarely do that though, Sheri. So you're not having many of those days.
well, I mean, I think I just did it recently on our WhatsApp group. Save me, I'm far from home and I'm miserable.
But what would you tell people to keep in mind if they want to make environments inclusive, specifically in science? So as if you have like an army of people right now, they're all zooming in or coming in, listening in, whatever it might be. And they all want to be allies, and they all want to kind of help change our environment. What's one easy thing that everybody can do?
I would say get curious. Understand that you are the expert in your field, and the person is the expert in their disability. And get curious about one another and have the conversation. Don't assume that you know what to do. Don't assume they know what to do necessarily. Like, they don't know which piece of software they're going to need and how to make it accessible necessarily. They might, but they might not. So my advice would be to remain curious and have the conversation, and know that probably every situation is going to be different, and that's okay.
I love it. I love it. Get curious. Like, there's nothing that we can't overcome with a little bit of dialogue and questioning back and forth. Never assume for anybody else. I love it. Is that right? Did I summarize that right?
That's right.
Wanda, do you have one easy piece of advice to give everybody?
Yeah, I do have a piece of advice for people to get together, and perhaps there are two pieces of advice. One that has to go with our will, and the other one is that somehow we as scientists, we should get together and write a big petition to the scientific journals, especially the scientific journals with the highest impact factors, in which they agree that regardless how good your scientific discovery is, it will not be published in this journal unless your paper is formatted strictly following accessibility rules. So everyone can read it.
We need to start a revolution in that. Like, the journals themselves need to start doing that. Like, it's kind of ridiculous that all this literature is out there and the majority of it is not accessible to us.
We just cannot really have the intimate relation with, and Sheri can talk about this, an intimate relation with the whole of the text by ourselves, because it's not accessible. We cannot perform an in-depth research because it's not accessible. And another thing that may be easy to implement, right? And another thing that may be easy to implement is let's enrich the courses on scientific writing in universities, enrich it with teaching these students how to write in an accessible manner. The Working Group on Accessibility and Disability of the American Astronomical Society, they wrote a document. These are professional astronomers with late onset disabilities, and students with disabilities. None of them were congenital disabilities. All of them were kind of late onset, like after their 20s, they developed their disabilities. And they made a humongous, the most list. It's published in the webpage of the American Astronomical Society of the things that have to be improved in the papers. And one of their many recommendations was that there is no balance in between being descriptive. The chart is there. Look at chart number 1, but it's not described. So there is not a balance between or among being descriptive and sign language interpretation. So many words do not exist in sign language. And that is one of the things that perhaps we as scientists may raise a petition, perhaps even ask, I don't know what, the Congress for policy making, because we are being highly left out. Our access to information is not equal. I do apologize. The other thing regarding Will is to never give up. Never, never, never give up. It's not easy. It requires a lot of work. It requires conquering your weaknesses. It requires doing things that perhaps you do not want to do. Like, for example, one day you may want to wake up late or go to the park, and you cannot go to the park because you have to dedicate 5 or 10 more minutes to your astrophysics class or your precalculus class, or I do not know, whatever class it is, your chemistry class or your physical chemistry class. You need to dedicate more time to that. But the stage at which you are right now is a very important stage in which you are sharpening your first professional experiences inside the classroom with a mentor, which are your lecturers. That relationship is really important, and is privilege of human beings, the mentor-disciple relationship. My invitation to do is to never give up, to never step back until you get to be victorious in life. And to be victorious is to never give up. I apologize, forgive.
Wanda, thank you very much. So actually, can I have the time? I don't even know what time it is right now. Does anybody have the time for me?
3:37.
So we're reaching around the point, I think, because I want to definitely open it up to the audience for questions, but do either of you have before I say, does either of you have comments? One thing that you said, Wanda, that I want to say is talking about making articles accessible. So one of the things that actually we've been implementing now in the bioengineering department is part of qualifying exams, like a presentation has to be alt texted. Alt text is alternative text, which is kind of hidden text that describes all the visuals that are found in presentations. Would you say something like that is also an easy implementation for professors? Let's say, if you have a bunch of faculty listening in right now, what kind of advice would you tell them to just make the classroom a little bit more inclusive?
Yes.
The classroom. Sheri.
Yeah, super easy. So describe what you're doing. Remember that this isn't just for blind people in the classroom. It's also for people who are looking down at their notebooks, writing down every precious word you say. They're not looking at you when you point at the board and go, this goes that way. Nobody knows what you're doing when you do that. It's just not awesome pedagogy. And you guys should all be doing awesome pedagogy. Also, ask for help. You will have some kind of disability services office on campus that can assist you in making your presentations accessible. Don't be ashamed to ask for help. Ask for an editor. I never send anything out to any journal. And I don't worry so much about my classroom presentations because I've given them enough time that I feel confident with it. But always ask for an editor. Get someone else to look at your stuff before you send it out there. That's just common practice. Everyone should do that, disabled or not.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we're gonna actually run a workshop at some point in the future on how to alt text as part of the Allied program. Wanda, do you have any advice also for faculty?
For faculty, I'm going to steal badly Sheri's recommendation, ask for help. There are a lot of recommendations online, and it just takes you, I don't know, less than 1 minute to do a search, and find good guidelines, and then get close to the disability, get the guidelines, write your paper, and then go to the disability office and ask them to please verify your paper or your presentation or your class module for accessibility. There are people that are neurodiverse. There are people that are hard of hearing. There are people that are blind, low vision. There are people that have multiple disabilities, a diversity of disabilities. But mainly, we shouldn't force the students to have to divulgate their disability to us. Autonomously, my classroom has to be completely inclusive for everyone.
Yes, yes.
That is something that I have to do, not as a token and not because I'm a good person, but because it's our human right to equality. Forgive me.
There's
No,
one more thing I
that's-
wanted to add if I could. So there is a certain amount of nonsense out there about accessibility. There's a certain amount of misinformation. Certainly if you poke around in a couple linguistics journals, a couple things got past us and are out there. So trust your bullshit detector. If something seems like it's just weird or is the kind of accommodation that's going to make the student feel uncomfortable, if you would feel uncomfortable with it, the student probably will too. And so don't be afraid to ask, is this okay? Is this the thing I really want to do? This doesn't seem quite right to me. This doesn't seem quite useful to me. So when your bullshit detector goes off, investigate. Trust
and
yourself.
always ask, right? Get
Always
curious.
ask.
Like,
Yeah,
and always
get
ask.
curious.
I mean, look, none of us are experts in everything. I can speak from my personal experience. I'm a blind professor. The first time I ever taught here in Northeastern, I had a hard of hearing student. And you know, I had no idea, but the student they didn't have to, but they came to me and they're like, I'm gonna sit in the front. And if you can speak loud every time. I was like, great, I'm a very loud person. I got it. So every person comes with their own story. Not everybody's the same. And on top of it, they don't have to divulge, but if you aim to make your environment as inclusive as possible, that is what Wanda said, just human right for equality. So with that, do either of you have last comments? I'm gonna pass it on. Do either of you have any last comments you'd like to share?
They will feel, the student feel your will to make the environment accessible if autonomously you take the initiative to make it accessible. The student will come to you. Yes.
I always start off saying,
Sorry.
no, I agree. I always start off my class saying, hey, this is how I teach. This is how, if anybody needs anything extra, if there's anything I could do to help the teaching process go better, I'm open. And that also indicates to my students that I'm willing to work with them. So with that, I would like to pass it off to Josh and he will field the questions. Thank you so much, Wanda and Sheri. You guys are awesome. Again, we had a blind linguistics professor here and a blind would you be an astrophysicist, Wanda? You're an astrophysicist, right?
I don't know where I am. I do everything. You ask me, you tell me what you want me to do and I do it.
And then Sheri's an astrobiologist. Amazing. Anyways, Josh, I'm passing it off to you.
Thank you, Mona. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Mona. Thank you, Dr. Wanda. And thank you, Dr. Sheri, for the wonderful, very insightful journey you've shared with us. We really appreciate it. We are really inspired. So now we'll just move on to the next part of the session. We are going to a very quick Q&A session. If anyone has a question, you can ask the professor or doctors here available. Please go ahead, guys. People who are on Zoom can also ask.
I have a question.
Yes, Professor.
You might have to repeat it for the people on Zoom. So they talked about guidelines in journals for accessibility. What can we do in conference presentations to make it accessible to everyone? None of my conferences ever have a translator, the sign or anything like that. Nobody ever talks about it. So what can we do when we present in conferences to make sure that it's accessible?
Dr. Sheri, Dr. Wanda, Professor Mona.
Is there a checklist?
repeat the question so they can hear it.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, Dr. Sheri, Professor Sandra's asking, what can we do to make the presentations in journals more accessible,
Not in journals, in conferences.
in conferences more
Conferences, right.
accessible?
So there are two levels to work at. One is the macro level of the conference itself. And yes, you can Google how to make conferences accessible online, but the two levels are the organizing committee. So are all your venues wheelchair accessible? Do you have quiet rooms for people when they need to step away? Because things get overwhelming. Have you hired an ASL interpreter? Do you insist that all of your presentations be delivered electronically in advance so that you can distribute those to people who need them? The handouts, both the handouts and the PowerPoints should be in the participants' hands before the conference begins so that they have access to what's being displayed or what's on the handout. And then as a presenter, there are basic pedagogy things. So if you have your head down and you're reading your paper fast, that's pretty much inaccessible to everybody. That's kind of how, linguists do their papers. It's sort of dismaying. As you can clearly see from examples 43 through 97, my hypothesis holds, that kind of stuff. It's not only inaccessible, but it's bad presentation. So describing your images on the screen, if you have images on the screen, and again, taking into account things that are basically just good presentation practice. Don't try, your paper should not be the entire book about astrophysics that you've just written. You take one thought that you would like to share and present it well as though you were teaching it with a little, with a little higher level than that maybe for most people. But try to describe what you're doing. Don't do that. This one does this thing when you apply this to it. And then just take your time and be aware of your audience. If your audience is looking bleary and confused, or if they're silent when you expected responses, then you know that you've misjudged. So again, it starts with the organizers. It starts with the organizing level, that the arrangers of the conference make that a priority, and then you as the individual presenter should have a list from the organizers about what best practices are. And if you don't, if you find yourself at a conference where that's not being taken into account, your job as an ally is to complain. Say, wait, why don't we do this thing, and let's do it better next time.
And there are also guidelines to best practices for colors and contrast for your presentation too, like the actual PowerPoint if you have one.
Yeah. Does anyone have another question? You can go ahead.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, please.
So this question is for Dr. Wanda and Dr. Minkara. So I was just wondering, of all the career choices out there, why did you choose science? What motivated you to go towards science?
Ask us.
Dr. Wanda, do you want to answer that question?
Well, I heard that someone was talking, but
Yes.
I heard the science.
Yeah, the person's asking, why did of all the professions, why did you choose science in your career?
I always wanted to become a scientist, and since I was a child, I wanted to become a scientist. And when my health got to its a worst peak of deterioration, it was my parents who told me not to give up. So I kept finding ways, and when I found myself without ways to do the science, then I performed experiments. I wouldn't have used audio if I wouldn't have evidence that it was good. I'm a scientist. I need to evidence scientifically this works, and then I will perform. That thing about I will do it intuitively. I'm a little bit I'm this kind of scientist, right? First I do my experiments and then I move forward. One of the things that that was really frustrating was going, for example, to presentations, as the previous professor was talking about, was mentioning about making presentations accessible, and listen in a chalkboard presentation or PowerPoint presentation, the lecturer talking this way. When you put here, when you substitute this number here and solve for this equation, your result will be this one on this slide. And me in my mind thinking, I substitute what in what slide, in what equation. Geez, that donut this morning really did it. Completely left out of the presentation. So being a little bit more conscious about our audience, and being conscious that we are here to communicate our research and communicate it in an effective way, because our research is fantastic and I want people to understand it, and moving forward is very, very, very important. But I chose astrophysics because I could use audio to do my research. I apologize, forgive me.
And
I think they the student also, I don't know if it's a student, but the question was also for me. So you ask why I wanted to be a scientist or why I entered science? Was that the question?
Yeah.
Why not? It was my passion. You know, it was something that I was inspired. I was always curious about how the world worked as a kid. You know, I used to watch Magic School Bus. I always say this, I'm a PBS kid. I watched Bill Nye the Science Guy. I was really influenced by that. And then I was diagnosed when I was 7 with macular degeneration conrod dystrophy. But my passion for science, like, is still there. It's a part of me, right? So, you know, why not? It's what I love doing. And I think that's kind of the whole point, is that everybody that has a particular passion should have the right to follow it and pursue it, because that's how we get then humanity to contribute to all sorts of problems.
if I could just piggyback on that, Mona, because I think that's that is the essential answer for all of us, I think. But the other piece is this: we often talk about the sense of wonder, and people often think that they get wonder from outside themselves. Like a person might feel the sense of wonder by looking at the stars and then want to become an astronomer. But the sense of wonder doesn't come from the stars. Wonder doesn't come from the outside world around you, things that you're looking at or things that you hear. Wonder comes from inside you. And if you are living in an environment with people who don't squelch that wonder, who don't try to break you and tell you that you don't belong, the wonder will propel you forward, and it will bring you to your career in science. And again, it's not about the outside world, and it's not about your body or your senses or even your mind. It's about that sense of, look, the universe, holy mackerel, what is this thing? And I'm alive in it. And isn't that a joyful and marvelous and magic thing? And that comes from what makes you human. And that's why we're all scientists.
I mean, I still have a sense of wonder whenever I find out something new about a protein that I'm studying. Can you believe this flap is actually designed for this reason? Like, it's over a tiny little protein on an atomic and molecular scale. So.
Thank you, Professor. We also have time for 1 or 2 more questions. Anyone from online can ask a question if they want to ask, or people here can also raise a question.
I have a question
Yeah.
for Professor Wanda.
Mhm.
She was mentioning about certain cases where she felt or went through that stage of feeling or going through that inadequate part. So I would like to know whether any creative or interesting step which she took to overcome that or to achieve what she has achieved today.
Yeah. Yes. Dr. Wanda, the person is asking, when you went through tough times, was there any innovative or creative step you took to achieve your goals?
It has to be many. Let me think back, because I'm as old as the switch of the sun. You know, the switch that you use to turn it on and off. I'm as old as that. Look, when I come from a very humble family. That's my pride. That's my honor. And our resources were really scarce. We barely. I always had my medication, right? But I could witness my mom, right, sometimes swallowing her tears in order for not to show us that we were passing through need, right? Through harsh situations. My sister also has very serious physical disabilities. The story of many. Now, when I was, I wanted to do a PhD. I wanted so badly to do a PhD. And I'm at home applying to universities. And the first question the universities in the United States would ask me were, how will you pay? Well, give me a grant because I really do not have a penny to pay. Or give me a student loan. The student loan pays part, but then how will you pay the other part of the degree? And one of the things that I did, in which I call it highly creative, is that I took my telephone and I began calling people. I took the telephone. At that time, it was those telephones plugged to the wall. I took the telephone and I began calling people. And that is how I got to meet my mentor at the University of Harvard, which is a university in Massachusetts. I called many universities and people would just disregard me, until I called and this woman, Dr. Brickhouse, answered the telephone. And that is when my creativity kicked in, because I was honest with her. I said, I want to become a PhD student. I'm a physicist. I want to become a PhD student in astrophysics, and I'm calling you to explore. I was completely honest. Do you have any grant or any advice for me to apply for grants? 2 months later, she got a grant from the Smithsonian, and between her and my mentor at another mentor, they sent me to the University of Glasgow. That was a big kick in creativity. So I had to take courage from, I don't know where. It was out of my will, my desire to move forward, that I got to become her mentee, and I will always be indebted to her. I apologize.
That's very inspiring, Dr. Wanda. Does anyone have another question? We can have one quick question. We're running out of time. Anyone on Zoom can ask a question.
So the way to find a solution, like for the problem, or is it the creativity? What is that reason that is attractive?
Yeah.
What part of the
Yeah.
is it because challenges people are being always behind and trying to put yourself under training and do something new? What part of it?
Yeah. Dr. Wanda and Dr. Sheri, the person's asking, what part of science attracts you more? Like the problems, do you want to find solutions, or is there any other part which attracts you more to science?
Sheri, take it.
It's that rush of when you understand a new thing. I remember, I mean, I always feel this way, whether I'm studying a new language, no matter whatever I'm doing, that noticeable change in your mind from, I didn't understand something, and then bam, the insight comes, slam, and all of a sudden your whole you could just practically feel your neurons quivering as they slam into new configurations. And that to me is the best feeling. And playing in the world with science for me is the best way to get that hit all the time. That and the people, when I get on a good team and we're working together, and that lovely sense of united nerds toward finding out about the world is so much fun, the camaraderie.
I get it. Professor Mona, do you want to add to that question?
To me, yes, someone is saying something.
No, I'm good, Wanda. No, I'm good. Sheri said it really nicely.
Do it, Mona, do it.
No, I don't have anything else to say. I was just saying that Sheri said it really, really nicely. There's nothing like the aha moment. And when you're working on a team and and you're firing like at top speed and like ideas are being created. Yeah. I mean, it's a sense of wonder for me. I mean, I literally, I'm just a very curious person, and I think that's what drives me. And it doesn't just stop at curiosity for me. Like I have to then share, I'll go, I'll call up my sister, be like, I just found out this thing about this protein. And she'll be like, okay, but I have to share it. I have to, move it forward somehow. Sorry, go ahead, Wanda.
To me, it's the searching for the unknown. To me, that keeps me moving like a thunder, faster than light. When I get those numbers and I get to manipulate them and listen for different things and point at things that no one else has noticed before, like when we found quasi-periodic oscillations in a cataclysmic variable star that no one else, people that have been searching on the data for decades, to me, that searching for things that no one knows and enriching, contributing to the literature, to me that keeps me moving forward and then defending it in front of my collaborators. That is the funniest part. That is the peak of the fun when you discover that you can defend your research, that you can create value with your research and enrich the field itself and extend it to humanity. To me, that's it keeps me going.
Yeah. Does anyone have a question? We can just wind the Q&A session.
And I was not an A student. I had to work very hard. I'm not one of those. I mean, bravo for the ones that are A student. I had to work very hard in order to get my C's in my B's. To me, a C was an A. I had to work very, 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 very hard in order to, but I worked. I never gave up. I apologize.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Wanda. Thank you, Dr. Sheri. Thank you, everyone, for participating interactively. Now I call upon the director of the Ally Project, Professor Sandra Scheffelbein, to give the word of thanks.
Hi, everyone. They just asked me to wrap up and close up this session. So I'm Sandra Scheffelbein. I'm a professor in bioengineering and mechanical engineering. I'm Mona's faculty mentor, which means that I help her through the becoming a faculty and how that process works. But we are so lucky at Northeastern to have Mona here because she helps us understand how inaccessible we can often be and what we should do to be accessible. That's part of the grant. So I'm a co-I on this grant with Mona, bringing awareness of disabilities. And I think the more we talk about it and make people aware, the more people are willing to make things accessible. So thank you all, Sheri and Wanda and Mona, for sharing your insights. I think what I took away is we need to be curious about people, not be afraid to ask, and by making things inclusive, it's not just inclusive for people with disabilities, but it makes it more inclusive for everybody. So we're improving quality for everybody when we make it inclusive. So I hope we can all remember that. Next time we give a presentation, we're not going to say this variable here goes there, over there, on this side. We can use more clear language, and that's something very simple that we can do. So thank you all for coming. Thank you to our presenters. It was so kind of you to share your path and your tips as well. And we look forward to seeing you at our next event, which will be Enabling Engineering, which is an engineering club that builds things for people with disabilities. Great, thanks for coming.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining. Thank you,
Okay,
everyone.
thank you so much, everyone. Nice to hang with you.